Welcome back to Hardball. With the 2006 election just weeks away, can Republicans manage to maintain power in Congress? Will the Bush team's full frontal assault on war critics work, or will it backfire? Here to dig into these questions are tonight's Hardballers, MSNBC political analyst Ron Reagan and Terry Jeffrey of Human Events. Thank you to both of you.
Thanks, Norah.
Terry, let me begin with you. A new Pentagon report out tonight delivered to Congress says sectarian violence is on the rise. Iraq is on the brink of civil war, and that they are facing the most complex security challenge since the U.S. invasion in 2003. Given the facts the Pentagon is reporting, can they win the politics of this when this White House is putting everything on Iraq and national security?
There's no doubt, I think, that the biggest problem the Republicans face politically going into November is the Iraq war. I think.
So then why are they campaigning on it?
Well, I think they can help neutralize the problem by pointing out a couple of things. Number one is the consequences that would ensue if the United States were to leave Iraq today. And number two is that the Democrats really aren't offering a realistic alternative. The fact of the matter is we went into Iraq with bipartisan majorities of both houses of Congress. A majority of the Democrats in the Senate voted for it. In fact, Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid, who wants to be Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, who runs the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, they both voted for the war. But do they have a clear alternative to the policies we've been following there that will get us to the stability we need for us to get out? I don't think they do. So I think the degree the administration focuses on the fact that they don't have an alternative and what the consequences would be helps neutralize the Democratic advantage on the.
Ron Reagan, you heard some of the strong rhetoric coming from the administration this week. Secretary Rumsfeld says that critics have a blame America first mentality, that essentially they are equivalent to Nazi-era appeasers, and that the media is in part to blame. Your reaction to his comments?
Well, I tell you, Secretary Rumsfeld wrote an op-ed in the L.A. Times today, and it was a catalog of misperceptions and misdirection. He said, among other things, that the people who question the war on terror and the war in Iraq that they don't believe the defense of liberty is worth the cost. He said that the people who don't believe in the war in Iraq are bent on appeasing the terrorists. Who exactly is bent on appeasing terrorists? I haven't heard anybody like that. This is just political rhetoric, and it's not going to work. The American public is leaving this boat in droves now, and you see that in the polls. But as Terry pointed out, it's really the only thing that the Bush administration, the Republicans, have right now.
Well, Ron, let me challenge you on that.
Everything else. Okay,
Ron, let me challenge you on that. On the appeasing the terrorists, would not leaving Iraq and the security challenge there, would not essentially hand a victory to the terrorists?
No, actually about 5 to 7% of the fighters in Iraq, by our own military's estimate, are actually foreign jihadis. The vast bulk of the violence is being created by sectarian militias, Sunni, Shia, a little bit of Kurds too, and that's what we're right in the middle of here, and that's what the public realizes. They have disassociated Iraq from the war on terror, and quite rightfully so.
Terry, what about that?
To dodge it, but he can't.
There is a perception that American troops are fighting al-Qaeda in Iraq. But what is going on now is sectarian violence, as the Pentagon points out in their report today.
Right. Well, I think there's a number of things going on in Iraq. And in his best speeches, the president explains it well. Sometimes I think he doesn't. But I agree with Ron. The principal conflict in Iraq is between Iraqi insurgents who don't want the Shia government to become stable and, in fact, be the future of Iraq. That is the principal struggle. Most of the casualties the United States are taking are from the Sunni insurgents. At the same time, however, al-Qaeda is present in Iraq, which was made clear by when we killed Zarqawi and rounded up a good number of al-Qaeda in Iraq terrorists. That is part of the struggle. It is not the core of the struggle in Iraq itself. And third, we have the sectarian violence, which in large part now is Shia on Sunni, and the government we're supporting in Iraq is, in fact, a Shia-dominated government. But all of those complex factors, Norah, point to the fact that which is the core of Rumsfeld's argument, if we get out of there now, what happens? Is it good for our national security interests, or is it bad for our national security interests? And the Democrats don't have any answer. They want to get out for political expediency, and they don't care what happens down the road.
I'm curious why the decision, the political strategy, is to make Secretary Rumsfeld the center of essentially the political fight, the lightning rod, if you will, by giving this very controversial speech earlier this week before the American Legion. Of course, Secretary Rumsfeld's folks tried to clarify those with the L.A. Times article today. Also, we have heard the very strong response from the Democratic Party and Today, we've gotten this, which is essentially Secretary Rumsfeld is now sending letters to Nancy Pelosi, who's the Democratic leader in the House, and the Democratic leader in the Senate, Harry Reid, saying, I'm concerned about the comments you made to the media about what I said. I'm sending you the full text of my remarks because I assume your comments to the press were in reaction to inaccurate media reports. So let's just, we get blamed now, he says.
He's always trying to blame the media, and he blames the terrorists for manipulating the media and suggests that the media is sort of complicit in this manipulation. At the same time, of course, the Pentagon is spending millions of dollars to manipulate the Iraqi media at the same time. It's not a media issue here. It's a reality versus fantasy.
And Terry, what about this, that now Rumsfeld wants to spend $20 million to monitor media reports about the Iraq War?
Well, if it's for the purpose of advancing U.S. national interest in Iraq, I think it's a good idea. But let me go back to this point that Rumsfeld made. I read Secretary Rumsfeld's op-ed piece in the LA Times, and at the end of it, he said, I hope that people would read my full speech at the Defense Department website. So I went to the Defense Department website, like anybody watching this show can, and I read Rumsfeld's full speech. And in fact, the speech really isn't so much an indictment of Democrats. He doesn't talk about Democrats. It is an indictment of the press. And I think he makes a heck of a point that people can check for themselves, Norah. He points out that one of the malefactors at Abu Ghraib has had 10 times as many references in the national media as Paul Smith, who posthumously won the Medal of Honor for his courageous action. I think there definitely is a reality of the fact that the liberal media in this country pushes negative stories in Iraq because they think it advances their political agenda.
What would this country have done had not the media exposed what was going on in Hurricane Katrina?
Look at Norah. I have no problem with the adversarial press. I am a member of an adversarial press.
What many people forget is that the White House also uses the press to their own.
The New York Times beat the Abu Ghraib prison story to death because they thought it advanced the liberal agenda. They thought it hurt President. And in the meanwhile,
Terry, they exposed Abu Ghraib because it was a terribly important story. American soldiers are torturing prisoners of war. That is an important story.
Terry, and I must point out, for accuracy's sake, that it was a man who serves honorably in our military that actually brought that information about Abu Ghraib to his superiors and to the press. Ron Reagan and Terry Jeffrey are staying with us. We're not done. Up next, predictions for the midterms.